Wait, look, it is a great day. A lot of college football talk, man. Rob Browne here with you on Tuesday, May 14th. Executive producer Brenden Martin down in Ocala. Hey, we had a great meeting at Memphis Touchdown Club Spring Speaker Series last night. Got a chance to listen to Greg McElroy and talk to him one-on-one. Got some great comments we'll play during the show today about Alabama's quarterback room and the glue guys that you need in recruiting and building a culture during NIL and the portal. And I'm telling you, I agree with him. It's what I believe. It's going to work. We also have Chris Lee from Southeastern 14, batting in the leadoff position.
He's in the Roy G. Biv room.
Gotcha. And then, of course, Yancey Porter, Rebel Yell Hotline, will be here, as well as Rodney Orr, Tider Insider. Smash the subscribe button, bottom right-hand corner. Allow notifications on Android or iPhone. A lot of people asking me at the Touchdown Club last night, Rob, how do I do it? Just tap that link that we send you. If you are watching this show, you've done it. Watch it live or at your leisure. We're coming at you. Here we go. Another great show on the way.
Just tap it in.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Chris, welcome this morning. Look, last night, no lack of interest in what's going on in college football. Greg McElroy last night speaking at the Touchdown Club. It was a great meeting. A lot of social hour before dinner. One-on-one with Harold Grader and Greg McElroy. Just really about SEC and the big picture of college football. Yesterday, Mitch Davis was on here. We were talking a lot of SEC baseball, and I know it is a hot topic right now. We got one more series this weekend, and I'm asking you, Vanderbilt, I think, has been to 17 straight NCAA tournaments. Any concern? I mean, they're at 12 and 15 right now. Kind of what's going on, because they have won a couple of national championships in the last 7 or 8 years and played for a couple of more.
Oh, I don't think it's just one thing. I think it's at least a half dozen things, some beyond their control, some within their control. But I think the combination of offensive environment where, I mean, look at the home run numbers and the exit velocities. You got teams in the league with higher exit velocities than the Orioles, who lead Major League Baseball in that category.
Yeah.
That's not how he built his team. He built his team more old style. Let's bunt and run and win with pitching. And I mean, you can't keep balls in the yard anymore. I mean, look, everybody's dealing with that problem in their own way. But some teams loaded up more on the slow pitch softball approach than they did. So that's one. I think two, they swung and missed at some kids in the portal that are now beating them in other dugouts. And the ones they did get have been hurt. They landed 4 kids. One of them, who was a leading batting average guy in SEC play, got hit in the face trying to bunt a couple of weeks ago and hadn't played since, had surgery, and may or may not get him back. Their closer got hurt in February. I don't think he's pitched since then. The transfer kid, Jacob Humphrey, who played pretty well this weekend, has been hurt for the better part of 2 months. So they landed and Levi Huseman was the other transfer. He's just been ineffective. They knew that was a little bit of a project. He was a top 25 recruit out of high school, but couldn't throw strikes at Coastal Carolina a year ago. So that's their 4 transfers, and they struck out on all of them for one reason or another. I think throw in the fact that, among other things, the league is tougher than it's ever been.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got 12 teams that I think if you put them in another conference, they'd all be in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah.
Your conference record's probably above 500. When you get to be 12-18, 11-19, or whatever it is, and even 13-17, a lot of years won't get you in. And people will howl about that. You let all these teams in from the SEC. But the truth is, you got what? I think all but one team in the top 45 of the RPI, something like that. I mean, somebody's got to win, somebody's got to lose, and they've taken a few more L's than W's this year in the league.
Yeah, and Mitch pointed out yesterday, all 13 softball teams. And again, you won't catch me saying women's softball. I mean, can you imagine if we had guys like Ben Troop and guys out there playing men's softball and he's gone yard? I mean, that would be insane. But all 13, and I'm wondering when Vanderbilt's going to get a softball team. But when Vanderbilt committed to baseball, and they've really had in the last 15, 18 years, probably the most consistent program in the country. Mm-hmm. So you're right. Iron sharpens iron. It says it in the Bible repeatedly, but it's true. You're just so much better prepared. But Butch Thompson's told us a number of times, if you play a team like Michigan, you learn a lot from them because of what they have to do indoors in the offseason. Mm-hmm. And every now and then Michigan will get deep into the World Series. Kentucky, how they doing it up there? Man, Vanderbilt has the mid-state within 250 miles. That's the backyard of Tim Corbin. That's what he said he would do, is get all those top players in that area. Where's Kentucky getting their players?
All over the place. And here's the weird thing about Kentucky. People have been on Vanderbilt for missing out on Braden Montgomery, whose girlfriend went to Texas A&M. And so they finished second on that one. They missed out on Chase Burns. I think he wanted to go to Vanderbilt, but the major he had at Tennessee, he couldn't transfer enough credits to get in at Vandy. So that's two guys they lost through no fault of Tim Corbin's. I say that for a reason. You look at Kentucky's roster, their best player, or maybe their second best player, is Ryan Nicholson, lefty first baseman from Cincinnati. Their third baseman is Mitchell Daly. So, and some of this falls apart a little bit. I was going to say they've gone more the mid-major, low major transfer route where it's worked. That's really more the case in pitching. I'll get to that in a minute. Mitchell Daly, their third baseman, transfer from Texas. Nick Lopez, they're switching to DH, transfer from Southern Cal. They're pitching. Trey Poozer, their number one starter, transfer from Charleston. Dominic Neiman, their number two starter, transfer from Central Connecticut. Robert Hogan, Cameron O'Brien, two of their bigger bullpen aces, transfers from Texas A&M and Campbell. So they really went all over. And then throwing Cooper Robinson, who throws some, he transferred from Cal Irvine. That's a pretty good mix of, and I say transfers. All these guys were playing at these schools a year ago. So they may have other transfers on there that transferred in a couple of years ago and played at Kentucky ago. Johnny Hummel, their closer, Erskine, Division II school in South Carolina. All that to say, he has done a masterful job at identifying transfers, number one. Number two, in the Gorilla Ball era, he has managed to put together a team that can run and can get on base, takes a decent number of walks. That's not the way you have built things that succeed in this day and age for the most part, and pitchers to keep the ball on the ground. They're not one of the higher strikeout teams in the SEC. They are not they'll walk a few guys, but I think what they do a pretty good job of for the most part is keeping the ball in the yard and keeping guys from hitting the ball hard. It's really I don't know, 40 years ago approach almost in some ways. Maybe not as offensively, but I guess it is. I mean, there wasn't the emphasis on base percentage a long time ago. That's a lot of words to say. He's doing this in a way that a lot of people aren't, and it's remarkable. There's 2 years in a row he's done it now.
Yeah. Why did schools like Southern Cal and Arizona, not that Arizona and Southern Cal aren't still good, but Rod Ditto won 11 College World Series national championships. We know Augie Garrido won a bunch at Texas. I think Texas has been to the College World Series 37 times. That might be, I think that's more than anybody. Why do they fall off like that when they got athletes everywhere in California, and Arizona is what the campus in Tucson is 6 hours from LA, but it's very close.
I think you look at the RPI right now. Look where all the teams in the top 30 or 40 are for the most part.
Yep.
It's all in this geographic footprint that the
Yep.
SEC and the ACC are in.
Yeah.
I think that what you're seeing right now, I think, is the footballization of the SEC, and some of that's great, and some of that's not so great. But what schools do you think are paying the highest NIL dollar? I don't say this with an intimate familiarity of the schools that you mentioned, and Texas will be an exception to that, I'm sure. But look at what you're seeing just externally across the SEC with new stadiums, with coaching salaries, with all those things. That the phrase "it just means more." I know people have made fun of that, but man, it's accurate. It does, and I think
Very accurate.
lot of the talent has come to this area of the country, but because, I mean, among other things, follow the money and the resources.
Yeah. Yeah. We were last night. It was interesting. Greg McElroy, in his talked about Vanderbilt with football. He said, and this is where we are right now. You talk about the portal. You get a player that pops up on your campus that you've identified. And I think Barton Simmons has been really instrumental. You know him, and going out and identifying a lot of these guys that might be a 2 or a 3 on somebody's radar, but he knows a player. Barton played at, I think, NBA with Clark Lee and was an all Ivy League safety at Yale. Knows his football like you do. But he said that's the problem is they develop a player, somebody gets some tape on him, and he's gone. They just grab him. And Vanderbilt, they don't want to be a developmental, we're not a farm school. But that's if you don't
but
invest in NIL, that's what's happening. Yeah, that's got to be frustrating because there were a bunch of Vanderbilt guys there I know, and they were asking that. It's frustrating. And Greg McElroy said, he knows they're pulling for Clark Lee, and he comes and speaks to the Touchdown Club in Memphis every year. God Almighty, they've got money, but you know what it is? It's with super old money. Those people are not going to play with the NIL. Old money doesn't touch it.
Well, I don't know that that's the case in Vanderbilt's case. I think some of the old money has seen that's the only chance we've got. I mean, look, let's look at what's happened. I mean, this decade, okay?
Yeah.
As bad as Vanderbilt's been, Vanderbilt never went winless for a season until 2020.
Yep.
2021, Clark Lee's first year, they go 0-for-8 in the SEC. Second year, they win 2 games. They beat Florida and Kentucky, and it seems like, here's some validation for what we're doing. Mm-hmm. Year 2, we won a couple of games after we hadn't won one since 2019 or whatever. Or it might have been 2018. I can't remember now. I think it might have been 2018. Or no, maybe they won. But I mean, maybe they won one in 2019. But it doesn't really matter. I mean, the point is, no wins, 1 win in the SEC. You're at the bottom.
Yeah.
I think they felt like, okay, this is starting to pay some dividends. And then, I think they learned that maybe it wasn't so much talent development as it was having a quarterback that, on 3rd and 8, everything could break down, but because he's a 10,600 meter guy, he can outrun your problems. For a minute. And, and then they were back to 0-8 last year and then losing some, they lost. I think one of their moments was when they lost London Humphreys. He was a receiver that they found and developed. He was local. His dad had been the track coach there. He takes off for Georgia. I think that was one of their many reality checks that were like, hey, wait a minute. And first of all, I don't think that the number of players that they had developed was quite what they thought it was going to be. I have some questions about some of their. I know that they designed it. How do you say this? Based on, all right, here's what an NFL safety looks like, measurables. Yeah. But at some point, either some of those fell apart, and the ones that didn't fall apart are getting snagged by Miami and Georgia and Alabama in the transfer portal. Well, not Alabama, not one of his guys, but they did lose their left tackle a couple of years ago. Point being, it wasn't working for a variety of reasons. They had to reshuffle, and now they're kind of going back to what they did 2 years ago with, hey, if you got a guy with wheels at quarterback, then it's going to cause some people some issues.
Yeah, it is, especially if they can drop back and pass accurately. And you're talking about Steen, the big tackle that went to Alabama.
Yeah.
And so look, Middle Tennessee is where the best players are in the state of Tennessee. And it's just getting better. We were up in Clarksville over the weekend, and Nashville's just. I mean, we got there right at 4:30 Friday afternoon to Clarksville. Good grief! My wife, having lived in Atlanta for 10 years, and we go over there a lot. It's like, man, Nashville, Clarksville, that whole mid-state is just. It's getting crazy, and you know what? People up in Nashville all say we don't want to be the next Atlanta. Nothing against Atlanta, but it's about the traffic nightmare. But still, Birmingham's got them all beat. A city as big as Birmingham is, the traffic's built for a city about a third that size. But a lot of players up there. So you said something last week about Tennessee and Vandy. Tennessee a few years ago would look at Vandy and say, baseball is what schools do that can't win in anything else. Now look at Tennessee's baseball program. We talked about Kentucky a minute ago. Tony Vitello, I like him. He's an aggressive guy. There's some goofy things about the fur coat and all that, kind of weird when it's baseball season, burning up. But they have fun, and they've created tremendous fan interest. And you look around the SEC at these venues, that's why they're going to host regionals, isn't it? I mean, I can't, even if it's close, your Alabama's softball team has a losing record, and they're hosting a regional because they'll pack the stadium.
Kentucky's another one where they're figuring it out. They're selling out 7,000. In a fairly new renovated stadium, I think, a couple years old, but they're starting to catch on. I'm interested to see what happens at Georgia, which has got a chance to be a national seed.
Yeah.
It feels like, and I think this all goes back to the SEC network. That's got a lot to do with it. When the ball games are accessible, and you can turn on a given Saturday when we're past spring football and the NCAA tournament and all that, and there's really nothing else for the college sports fan to do other than follow the portal. The product is as good as it's ever been. The number of people covering it is much larger than it was 10 years ago. I used to go in the press box. I used to go in the Florida, another one. Florida has built a beautiful ballpark.
Oh, yeah. You go out there on the berm and chill out, and you get cocktail service and everything else. It's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only school. Again, I'm kind of interested to see what happens at Georgia, because that has been we love our football, and there's almost been a sense of pride that we don't care about the other stuff. But you started to see at Georgia, Stegeman drawing some good crowds this year with the competitive team. And you could argue that the baseball team is a top 5 team in the country at the moment, and it's doing the things that put fans in the stands, home runs. It's got a superstar in Charlie Condon. I think really the only school where baseball has not caught on is Missouri, and it may never catch on. I don't know. It's a colder weather, different kind of place. You've also got it's also sandwiched, a 2 to 3 hour drive from 2 major league teams. Yeah. But I mean, I think you look at the interest in the stands, you look at the TV, the fact that it gets talked about. I mean, 10 years ago, nobody was having me on shows to talk about SEC baseball. No, it's a different environment. I think there's some good things that have come with it, and there's some not as good things that have come with it.
Yeah. The theory, a lot of people think when you put games on TV, people aren't going to go. When you put games on TV, in my opinion, it attracts more people to go, because I look at numbers and charts every day studying financial markets. If you look at the trend from 1984, that CFA lawsuit, Chuck Ninus, Georgia, Oklahoma, after that lawsuit was won, instead of being on TV only a max of 5 times in 2 years, unlimited, everybody's expanded their stadiums, in most cases, multiple times. And it has caused people, and this theory about the man cave during the virus lockdowns, that's a bunch of BS. Yeah. And it was people, you may do that occasionally by yourself. It's just no fun sitting around by yourself and also you get sore. You're I don't know if you're going to get curvature of the spine or scoliosis. You got to be active.
Head sores.
Yeah, you can't. I don't care. When I go to Auburn, I don't ever give a damn who they're playing. I'm going to see Auburn. You're going to see Florida. You don't care this stuff about, I'm not going, it's not going to be a good game. How do you know that? You're going to see your team. That's what a real fan does. And you don't leave at the end of the third quarter. Remember the Seinfeld episode about everybody, okay, when are we going? When are we going? We got this big event. They get there. Okay, when are we leaving? Just enjoy it.
Yeah.
I don't leave till the players kneel for the prayer at the end of the game at midfield.
Oh, I'm out of there.
And the fans shake hands from both sides.
Out.
The players.
I'm out. I'm not sitting in that traffic.
Well, my deal is
I'm gone. I want my press pass. I'm sending the sidelines. I am not messing around with any of that. I don't even like the press box. Like
Chris, I like
my camera.
There.
Let me go to the sidelines and like shoot my game, and then I'm out.
Yeah, and that's what those guys with CBS, when you work with them, they're ready. Get me a flight out of here. I need to go.
Oh, gone, because you got to. You have another game to do. It's like it's like the next game. But I want to track this back a little further, because I think the universities, the bigger universities themselves, have taken. Well, I know they have. They have taken a huge. This is all probably 2008, 2009. We saw the resurgence of the need for internal media, right? And I think a lot, and I was, we were working for Gator Country. We're running Gator Country, and we were one of the first websites to stream to their membership. Right. So we were on it was a whole convoluted deal how you had to do it, and you had to go through Mogulus.com and all this kind of stuff, but you could stream your own shows. So we started that in 08, 09, with a la Tim Tebow years, all that stuff. And then you saw the universities just, take a step further and say, well, we're shooting practice. Okay. So we have guys with cameras, right? Guys and gals with cameras shooting stuff. Let's put them more on the field and get more of that, game experience, all that kind of stuff. And then websites, sort of re-exploded again, and people, and they took advantage of that. And that's where they started to do live streaming of the non-rev sports and the other sports that weren't on TV, baseball, all these kinds of things. The university started to live stream to their own websites. And I think that I saw an engagement there, of people who were able to access something they weren't able to access before. And I think that it, slowly built, and said, and then, the bean counters up at network said, hey, there's a margin here. We can make money. Let's make this like regional baseball, and I think that, in my opinion, I think that there's a strong connection in technology and the ability to get your product on.
Yeah. It is amazing to me. One of the things, and I've thought this for a long time, the decisions that seem to be there for the taking that are right in front of us, and the reluctance to embrace those things. Like, if you had started televising every SEC football game 30 years ago, 40 years ago, what would the market have been? You can't tell me there. I mean, I remember 20 years ago, there were certain SEC football games. If you wanted to hear them, you had to listen on the radio. You couldn't find them on TV anyway. That is amazing to me. And you go back, I always use Major League Baseball as an example, because I think they're the ones that have been as short-sighted as anybody. The whole thought in the 40s and whenever that, TV is going to kill our product because nobody's going to go, and those kind of things. And I mean, and look at the franchises are now worth dozens of times what they were worth then, maybe hundreds, probably hundreds. And I apply it to football, like how the playoff thing, the 12th. I'm like, how do we think? I was always amazed that we didn't get the 12-team playoff or whatever before now, because you look at the success of the NCAA basketball tournament.
I agree.
That football is several times more popular. Like I've been for a decade or more in my head going, how has this not happened just based on the money? The money will pull you places that good ideas on their face can't. I'm like, how much money are we passing up by not having a 12-team play? And I look at the SEC now. I think the SEC has been short-sighted with its in-conference scheduling. with not going from 8 games to 9 games in football.
Correct.
I understand. I think there's shorts. A friend of mine was sending texts. I hadn't even thought about it. The SEC released its basketball schedule yesterday. You got the Big East with what, 10 teams or 11 teams or whatever, and they're playing 20-game schedules. The SEC has a 16-team league next year. They're playing an 18-game schedule. Like, you're just leaving money on the table.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
You are.
You place Alabama, UT Chattanooga with Alabama, Florida. I'm still amazed that I think we're leaving opportunities out there. I understand why, because the coach that goes 6-6 and gets to a bowl, if you replace that game, that weekend in November with the competitive game, you might not get to go to a bowl.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm still amazed just in this conversation thinking how many tens, hundreds of millions of dollars has the SEC in college football just left on the table through the years by decisions that would make them more money instantaneously.
All right, I'm going to throw one out at you, and this is a Captain Obvious moment, but the reason why we have not gone to the 9-game schedule is because I think Greg Sankey, the commissioner, didn't think he had enough votes, because there are a lot of schools that are trying to protect themselves. Got to get to that 6 wins for the bowl. Now you got Oklahoma and Texas coming in. They're going to give the necessary votes. We'll go to a 9-game conference schedule in the next couple of years. I'm pretty sure we will. Chris, Southeastern 14, stay on with us if you can. I love getting this round table because, folks, you can sit there and say, I get excited. Yeah, I do. But I am so blessed, man. We are all having Chris Lee, Yancey Porter, Rodney Orby on with us in a minute. Brenden Martin, our executive producer. He rides out storms, hurricanes, avalanches, sinkholes down in Ocala.
Guy on the Weather Channel.
Yeah. Hey, I love, though, this conversation. And we're going to have some comments here in a few minutes from Greg McElroy last night when we talked to him at the Touchdown Club. Yancey Porter, you can catch him Monday nights, 6 p.m., Sports 56 WHBQ Memphis, and Super Talk all over Mississippi. That's 2 syllables, Mississippi. Great content, Chuck Rounsville, Harry Harrison, Gary Darby, Gordon Ford. Wish they had more time. Of course, go out there and sell all those sponsors. It ain't easy. But Yancey, we talked about it last night. A lot of Ole Miss talk last night. They had the Double Decker Festival a couple of weeks ago. And the Landers Ford people, they title sponsor for the Touchdown Club of Memphis, and everything supports Le Bonheur Children's Hospital. But Mr. Ritchie was there last night. He played at Ole Miss. Said there were like 100,000 people down there, guys, for the Double Decker Festival. Someone said, what was it? And someone said, I'm sure there was alcohol involved with all that foot traffic. But big time, a lot of excitement down there. So jump in the foray here with this round table of scholars.
Yeah, I mean, going to the basketball schedule, the football schedule, it's just a shame. What made the COVID year so much fun for football was what? You actually played an SEC schedule, right?
Yeah.
And that was 9 games. And
10.
I mean, 10. Well, no, it's not. Well, no. Was it 10 or 9?
Yeah, you played 10. You played 10.
There were a lot of cancellations, and so a lot of schools had 9. That's right. But you should look. I've been a proponent to go to a 10 SEC game schedule, not 9 but 10.
Wow. Okay.
I mean, two patsies is enough. I mean, you look at Ole Miss's schedule, for example. They don't play anybody until Halloween week. And I mean, you got all this excitement, and yes, it will come at the end of it. But why should you go 2 months into a season before you play real competition? It's just, I don't know. It kind of loses its luster. And then, by the way, hey fans, pony up some more money, to go watch them play Slippery Rock. And it gives you more of a barometer of who the true conference champion is as well. You look at baseball; they're only going to play 10 of the 16. So it's I don't know. They got to do something. I don't care what the bottom league wants if they want to play 8 and so they can get to the 6 wins and basketball is trying to eke into the NCAA. At least that's more of a proponent because if you get in the field, anything can happen, right? If you get in the playoffs or get to 6 wins, you're not getting to the playoffs. So I don't know. Something needs to be done from a competitive standpoint because you're putting onus on the fans. It's hot. We got global warming going on. the first month of the year is 105 degrees. Nobody wants to go watch your team play a Patsy. That they just don't. So
Yeah.
they got to do something about it.
And again, I don't want to step on myself, Chris, when I talked about you're going to see Ole Miss, you're going to see Auburn, or you're going to see Florida or Vandy, whoever, regardless of who you're playing. But he's right. That first month, it's the games where they're not even going to be in doubt, Chris. I like Yancey. That 2020 schedule was
awesome.
It really was.
Every week was a real game, just like the NFL.
Yeah. That's Chris. Rebuttal.
Well,
agreement.
I don't. It's an agreement. I don't.
Yeah.
I know we're living in SEC country where we look down our nose at everybody else, but I always liked the way the Big 12, and I know they became a punching bag, but the way they have scheduled in football, and I think this is one place where we actually got something backwards. The Big 12 played out a regular season. You played a round robin. That should determine a champion. Everybody plays everybody once. It didn't. Everybody's doing these championship games for revenue, so they have to reboot the whole thing and say, hey, we just kind of decided a champion, but not really. We're going to match 1 versus 2, even if one had a 2-game lead over 2, which would seem fairly decisive, and then play them again to get a championship game like everybody else. Number one. And in basketball, round robin schedule. Everybody played everybody home and away. And I always liked that. If you wanted to determine a champion, shouldn't it be everybody playing everybody in football once and in basketball twice, instead of this thing where, we may decide a champion next year based on the fact that you drew the wrong 3 teams or didn't draw the wrong 3 teams in your crossovers. And I've never liked that. I've always thought the Big 12 got that right.
Yeah. Yeah. Guys, we all remember prior to 1992, and it really in the mid 80s, it already disappeared. But prior to that, there were some SEC schools playing 7, some playing 8, some only playing 6, and they were declared champions. They would have 2 easy conference games, and you look at some other school that beat them head to head, and they didn't play as many games, and somehow in the back room at the Birmingham Country Club, they figured out, well, let's see here. Well, Alabama or whoever, Auburn or whoever. That's what it used to. That's just what used to happen. Some play 8, some play 6, but the mathematical formula says otherwise, and that created. But I'm gonna say to all of y'all, we talked about used to be so great. The crowds in the 70s are nothing, and even in the 80s compared to what they are now. I mean, Yancey, remember the Grove? Used to be more people in the Grove some games than there were in Vaught Hemingway Stadium. Now there's 60,000 plus in the Vault and 40 or 50,000 just tailgating and just being there. And Yancey, I dare say more than a few big business deals are consummated, along with other things like a lot of great eating and drinking in the Grove.
Yeah, I mean, I would expect the Grove to have more fans for the first 2 months of the year than the stadium. I'll probably be in the Grove trying to make money. Going to watch that schedule is, I don't know. I mean, it's a doozy for sure. It's you could sleep to Halloween and wake up, and then the real season starts, and it's just at least used to in the prior years, Ole Miss would play a national team on opening weekend, usually Labor Day's Monday or somewhere around there, and it at least got your juices flowing before you went into the snoozers. But I mean, they just snooze right into it. It's a snoozer from week 1. So, I mean, look, this, teams trying to have a goal to get to 6 wins. I mean, that's fine. What is your university striving for? If that's fine, then buckle up and get 6 wins in a 10-game SEC schedule. And, then you hear the argument, well, then that allows some out of conference teams that aren't nearly as good to get in because they're say 11-1, and the SEC teams could even be 8-4 with the 10-game schedule, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah,
then you take the RPI and the strength of schedule into effect, and you really use that as a variable when you select the teams,
correct.
and that pushes that. But you got to really use it, right? And so, that's really the biggest proponent right now of going and playing these four Patsy teams, maybe one power, five, or now we call it power four conference schools. And then what do, right? Now you see all the schools in the SEC to get away with that. They're scheduling the Wake Forests and stuff like that. Nothing against Wake Forest. Ole Miss plays them this year, but they're going after the weakest power four teams, right? And
Correct.
so it's I don't know. I just think they need to go to a 10-game schedule, 9 at the minimum. There needs to be at least 3 permanent rivals every single year. And then in baseball, it's got to get past 10 out of 16 teams. They got to figure something out. In basketball, everybody should be playing everybody.
Yes.
And most twice. You got to figure something at 16 games, 18 games, a minimum of 20. I say go to 24. You still get an extra 10 non-conference games. How many do you need to play?
Yeah.
I don't know. That's just my opinion on it all.
I love this line of thinking, Chris Lee. 24 SEC basketball games. Look, the NFL model, you had the Giants back in '07 at 9-7, end up winning the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And it makes if you had a 10-game conference schedule, 2 non-conference games,
Yep.
I don't have a problem with it at
Greg,
all.
talk about the depth in the quarterback room at Alabama and
And
what
look, if
changes
it's
you might see
a
happening
matter
with
of
Kalen
studies
Moore
for
coming
books,
in
which we
versus
know
what
that's not
Alabama
what it's
did
about,
last year with Nick
you have a
Saban.
month. You have a month between Thanksgiving and when the real bowl games start. Right, that's 4 weeks to get them in. But if they want to claim that, then get rid of the conference championship football games. Like you said, if you win by 2 games, why are you playing in a championship game anyway? Right. And then it
Yeah.
puts some schools at a disadvantage now because you got to play an extra game. What about a team that doesn't have to go to the conference championship? And now they only have to play 16 games instead of 17 games in
Yeah,
a college football schedule because it's going to be a war of attrition. I mean, 17 games is a different model. I mean, this is like the NFL now, where
it
you
is.
are at the end of the year and 50% of your starting 22 when you look on an opening day aren't around anymore because they're hurt. So there can be competitive advantages for teams that says, let's lose this last game. Let's don't go play in the conference championship. We're still fine for the playoffs, and let's keep our eye on the big picture. You don't want that to start happening, and trust me, it will.
Chris, that is a great point. A 17-game schedule. Might we even see, I think 44 years ago, then Auburn coach Doug Barfield proposed in the Auburn Plainsman. I'll never forget this. I was like, kid, says, why not have Auburn play Ole Miss? We don't play them every year. Play Kentucky for these spring games to make them exciting. That begs the question, Chris, will we go to preseason scrimmages against other schools? Like we do in basketball now, we're doing it. It's just a matter of time before we do it in football because you know why? Makes money.
Probably. I mean, I think, there was a lot to unpack there. Yancey said some really good stuff. I don't know if I have time to if we have time for me to get to it all.
Yeah.
But
Rodney Orr's going to join us in just a minute. But when he gets on, I do want to play those McElroy comments because he talks about the quarterback room at Alabama and then the portal and how you can build a culture. And it's some interesting stuff. And I want to get everybody's comments. So please stay.
Well, I think the professionalization of the SEC in college sports is eventually going to carry us in a direction at the pro. Now, Nancy said one thing that's important in the pros. You have some disincentives to compete at different times, like whether you need to rest a guy for the playoffs or, hey, let's tank and get draft picks. Of course, nobody does that, as we know. But if they did, and in college sports, it's the opposite. By being awful, that begets more awfulness because you've got to go recruit your. So I think, it'd be really interesting if you could keep all the things, if you could make college sports, all the things we like about the pro sports, but you could get out some of the stuff like the incentives to tank that are not inherent in college sports and have a mix of those. Boy, that'd be a great product to watch.
Wow. It would. I just think the interest in college football and college sports is growing in spite of all the off the field distractions. But man, I'm with both of y'all, man. You play 9 is great, but yeah, go to 10. Man, you talk about TV ratings. They're going to go off the charts. And the SEC right now is not getting as much TV money as the Big Ten because 75% of the TV sets in America live in the footprint that is the Big Ten.
Yeah.
Rob, you look at it, you go to 10, you still have your local rival, right? You
Sure.
still get Georgia Tech, Florida
Yeah.
State. You get all the local, and then you can have go play a Southern Cal or UCLA, or you want to make it interesting, a BYU or something like that for the fans. But that's why eventually you're going to go to 80 team realignment, whatever the number is going to be.
Yeah.
And then all the games are interesting, right? But trying to support, the teams that are 105 to 130 just to get your win. I mean, the fans just aren't interested in that anymore. And that's why it's half filled when you play those games. And then the coaches have got to get bellyache on TV and say, hey, like Saban did and like Lane Kiffin did. And, no, you can't fool them. Nobody cares about seeing your team play, slippery rock. They just don't.
Yeah. They want to see they want to see your team win, number one. But they know when it's a win, Chris. They know they're too smart.
One overarching thought I've had in all this is that I think one of the problems is how we build ways of doing things and rules and those things. And I'll give you an example. And I'm not saying this to pick on these guys, but I think it's like the left field lounge Mississippi State. We're started with came out and put a bus or whatever out there and put some seats, and somebody said, hey, that's a great idea. I'll bring my own bleachers or whatever it looked like. Next thing you know, you just got people erecting these things one on top of another. And the atmosphere is kind of cool, but you look up and it doesn't all fit together. And then at some point they just kind of, I guess, I hadn't been there in a long time, but they just kind of blew the whole thing up and said, hey, let's build a stadium, a new thing from the top down. That's kind of how college football and sports approach rules. We're like, all right, we're going to add this transfer portal window and NIL at the same time, but we're not going to really think about how these things react together. And we piecemealed together this whole set of things, whereas I think if you started from the top down and blew up all of college sports individually and thought it through as how does this cohesively stick together, rather than adding one thing to a mix that may not interact with what's there, I think that would solve a lot of our issues.
Yeah, and the fans, the cost of the tickets is really high.
Goodness.
And so you got a family, let's say you've got your wife, 4 kids. I mean, a big family. That's a big family in today's world. Man, it ain't cheap. And even the Motel 6 jacks their rates up. And you're still going to have muddy water coming out of the faucet. But anyway, the fans that live on the Gulf Coast, if they have an 8:00 kickoff in Tuscaloosa or Auburn or Ole Miss or Mississippi State, and you live in Gulfport or Mobile or Pensacola, man, you're getting back about 5:00 Sunday morning. And, if you're married, your wife's got all kind of stuff for you to do Sunday. So you're not going to get any sleep. It's brutal. We've been dealing with this for a long time, but I think the SEC network, what it's done in August will be its 10th anniversary. It's made non-revenue sports more popular than ever. And you mentioned it earlier. And look, nobody, I don't know what, I think I'm right in saying this, Yancey. Nobody sells more baseball season tickets, believe it or not. Is Mississippi State and LSU are incredible in Arkansas than Ole Miss. Ole Miss has 4,000 people on the waiting list. Yancey, am I correct?
Yeah, they sell, I believe, about 9,200 season tickets. I don't know what Arkansas's and Mississippi State and the rest of those, LSU. That's usually kind of the big four when you're talking about
Yeah.
attendance for baseball. They kind of separate every year from everybody else. But yeah, I mean, they're adding on. They've got another $32 million project to add some more club seats. I think 1,200 club seats that they're adding on to the stadium. So that number will go up as everywhere. Everybody's trying to get premium seating. It's not about the size anymore. It's about trying to bring in the most revenue, right? But yes, they do an outstanding job. Now they keep doing like they've done these last 2 years. There won't be
Yeah.
that waiting list anymore.
Yeah. It'll be you're right. I mean, I just think, guys, that TV for football, for basketball, and you look now, why is Alabama talking about building a new basketball arena? Maybe because they see what's going on around them. They just made the Final Four. We're still talking about Alabama basketball. And Chris, it's May 14th. When was the last time that happened? Because it's a big time product.
Excepting the state of Kentucky, pretty much never.
Yeah. 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 So, and in Arkansas, my goodness, these people in Memphis and in Arkansas right here all together are going crazy. In Ole Miss, in year 2 under Chris Beard, I would expect a lot of improvement just because of the portal. And Chris has been a head coach, 9-10 years total? And look what he's already accomplished. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch all this. Hey, let's get to these comments if we can, Brenden, if the software allows, from former Alabama quarterback and ESPN analyst Greg McElroy on the quarterback room at Alabama and kind of what he thinks is happening with the portal and its effect on teams, good, the bad, and the ugly.
Greg, talk about the depth in the quarterback room at Alabama and what changes you might see happening with Kalen DeBoer coming in versus what Alabama did last year with Nick Saban.
Well, I think offensively, philosophically, they're actually going to be really similar. What people kind of forget is that Kalen DeBoer, his offensive coordinator, Ryan Grubb, he actually was almost hired by Nick Saban leading into the 2023 season. And Ryan Grubb decided to stay at Washington for one more year, anticipating it being kind of a special season for him. So Ryan Grubb was really close to taking that last year. So Nick Saban already kind of liked the design of how they did things. So when he brought in Tommy Rees, they tried to implement some of the multiple tight ends, some of the different things that they've used with success at Washington the last couple of years. So philosophically, it's going to look very similar. As far as quarterback run, they'll probably use a little more quarterback run, I would anticipate. And then looking a little bit more at the quarterback depth, I think the reason why they can utilize quarterback run, because I think they feel really good about their depth. I mean, if you only had one guy, then you would never want to put that one guy ever in harm's way, right? Yeah. You just want to protect him, keep him in the pocket as safe as humanly possible. But I think they're real pleased with how Jalen's progressed. I think he had a plan of kind of approaching the offseason and trying to improve in different areas. And I think they're real thrilled with the growth that he's shown in some areas. And then I think they're also really excited about what Ty Simpson did. Yeah. I mean, Ty Simpson last year, I think a lot of people thought he had a real shot to be the guy. I know I certainly did. But looking at it now, I think he's finally mature and I think he's more confident in his own abilities. And then Dylan Lonergan, being able to retain him as well. He's a guy that the previous staff had a lot of really, really high praise for. And then to add the transfer from Washington, Austin Mack is big as well. So I think they're really deep at that position, and it's not often you can get down the depth chart and get 3-4 deep and actually feel like every one of those guys, if God forbid they had to play extended time, I think they could probably handle it. So it's a good spot to be in for sure.
You also talked tonight in your talk about glue guys on the team, the threes and the fours. You can't have, there's only maybe 35 5-stars in the whole country out of 3,500 kids that sign each year. You had to wait your time. You had to work your ass off to get to be that quarterback. It was worth it, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, but I think you got to have some guys, I believe very much right now in the modern day in college football, the importance of culture and the importance in development. And I know development now has kind of been pushed to the side for some guys. I'm not going to say all, but for some guys, development is less important because NIL is so important. But I think there needs to be a balance. I mean, you can make good money, maybe not as much as you might make elsewhere, but you're receiving really hands-on quality development from an elite coaching staff. I think you have to be able to balance those two things if you're a player. I would like to think that I would have balanced it. Granted, I'm not 18 anymore, and I don't know what my priorities would be if I went through it now. But I would like to think that I would approach both the NIL opportunities and the development side and kind of combat it together. But at the same time, man, I think it's a great spot to kind of analyze what's important to you as a player. There's some places where you can make a bunch of money, and that's great. And there's some places that you can earn more money on the backside if you perform at a really high level because they're structuring their NIL a certain way. So I think it's always worth it to wait because I look at Carson Beck's situation at Georgia, waited 4 years, and now he's in line to probably be a top 5 pick next year.
Yeah, I like those. I like those comments. And Rodney, I was getting your text while I was sitting there. He gave a great talk last night. Rodney Orr, Tighter Insider. It's only $48 a year on the May Veterinary Clinic, Tuscaloosa and Northport. 2 locations open every day of the week. Sundays, drop off and pick up only. Camp May for dogs, cats, and all your critters. Got an outdoor pool. If you got a bunch of cats, they can all stay together in the connecting cat condos. And $48 a year. Also catch them Tuesday nights with Gary Harris, Channel 23, WVUA in Tuscaloosa, Tighter Insider TV. Rodney, we got Yancey Porter, Rebel Yell Hotline, Chris Lee, Southeastern 14 on with us. And your response to what Greg McElroy said, again, knocked it out of the park with his talk last night, got multiple standing ovations.
Yeah, no, Greg's a really, he's a well-spoken guy, and he knows how to really kind of explain things extremely well. But
yeah,
no, I agree with him, man. I mean, it sounds just like things I've heard about that quarterback room. Obviously, Jalen Milrose made a lot of progress, and Ty Simpson and the other guys. So the depth is really there, and I just think that when you look at this, right now, I think there's a lot of curiosity. What it's all going to look like when it comes together.
Yeah, and Chris and Yancey, you heard. No, I don't know anybody that has 4 quarterbacks in a room right now that capable, and that's culture that's keeping that together. Somebody want to take a stab at that, but there's nothing but culture.
I wonder. And this is not a really fully formed thought, but maybe there's something there. Does this all come back around? Because let's start at the top of the NFL quarterback rooms. Okay. You used to draft a guy in the first round. You'd have a guy, everybody kind of knew you were going to sit your guy for a couple of years, your rookie, and play under the sun of the guy, and he learned the system. In college football, you would recruit a freshman. He knew he was going to sit a couple of years, and he would wait his turn. And by the time he was a junior or senior, he'd be the guy. That's all falling apart at the lower level. At the higher level, it's accelerated. I wonder if there's some sort of a middle ground in here where it's a return to more of what we had before, where now that you can actually get paid in college, does it kind of go back to the way it was, where if you create a culture and a development path where guys can see at the finish line, it's going to benefit them, even if it might not at the start of the race. That's a lot of stuff. I don't know if it made any sense, but I do wonder if in all those dynamics, there's something that resolves in a way that looks more like it used to.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that's a great way to analyze it. I think that's a great analysis because, and I do think there's a lot of good things you said there. I think that, you look at Ty Simpson, he was a guy that was determined. It's like Greg said, everyone thought that he might win that job last year. It didn't happen. And Greg used the word mature. I think that was the key. He was not really mature enough to handle the position and to take the position. And then I think when the transition came with Kalen DeBoer and now Nick Sheridan's the offensive coordinator, I think there's a lot of trust there that the development process is what is best for Ty, and yeah, his coach at UT Martin, the head coach. And I think he can see from that coach's perspective that it's important for Ty to, continue to sit until his opportunity comes. And I think you're exactly right. The development is something that's really key there. And I think Ty sees that.
Yancey, throw your 2 cents in. You're seeing over there with what Lane Kiffin does with his quarterbacks.
Yeah, I mean it's unusual, right? I think Ole Miss has 4 quarterbacks that are top 100 players when they came out of high school.
Wow.
So it's but that's an outlier, right? I mean Lane is known as developing quarterbacks. Specifically with Alabama's case, it's I like what Kalen's doing, what I hear about using the legs more, right? I think that opens things up for him and allows him more time and doesn't put so much pressure on reading defenses as quickly with Jalen. We saw him progress as the year evolved. And so, it's naturally, that was his biggest sticking point was just reading defenses, right? So that comes with experience, that comes with reps. We've seen it countless cases through the years of other guys. This really could be a breakout year for Jalen, and I'll be shocked if Ty wins the starting job. Honestly.
No, I don't think there's any thought about Ty winning the job actually right now. I think it's if that opportunity comes available in terms of if there's an injury or if Milrose struggles. I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility. But so I think Ty's thoughts is hey, you know what? After this year, I've still got 2 more years. It's kind of like Chris said, that kind of that look into the future, looking at the finish line and what it's going to benefit him to sit and wait and all of those things. Ty made a statement when he committed to Alabama. He said, "Look, I really don't look at going in and starting right away. If I have to be Mac Jones, get that 1 year." I'm not sure that's what he expected or hoped, but I mean, so that's something that's kind of right now it's playing itself out.
Yeah, Chris, I know you've got to bounce out to another commitment. Let people know how they can follow you, and as always, love having you stay on here with us. This is just getting the band together, man. This is great music.
Yeah, you do a great job of sparking some good conversations. I always have fun. Never know what it's going to go always, but that's great. I don't mean that as a slight. I think that's what makes for good talk. It's always fun. I appreciate you having me on and the way that you treated me. Southeastern 14 is where we do our stuff. It's on YouTube, and our thing is we are looking for a place where we talk SEC sports and football, baseball, and men's basketball at kind of the 30,000 foot level. You will get better coverage of your team by the 2 gentlemen are with me here. If you want to get a good idea of the league as a whole and how everybody stacks up, I think people have liked what we brought there. And so if that's what you're looking for, just to kind of keep up with the SEC and those 3 sports in one spot, I think you'll like what we do.
Well, you do a great job of it, and that's why I love the combination of the 2. So thanks so much, and let's do this again next Tuesday.
Hey, thank you for having me.
You bet. And, and that's the cool thing about it, Rodney and Yancey, is that what we call the 40,000 foot view from above, and then you drill down local, and that's what SEC Sidelines Sports Network and SECU are doing. I thought it was really interesting to hear Greg McElroy talk about Kalen DeBoer. The fact that he's 104-12, he had to do everything, coaching on the smaller level, drive the bus, do the walkthrough an hour away from the stadium sometimes in a field because that's what the circumstances dictated. You talk about adaptability. I think that is critical. And he also said, Kalen DeBoer, he gives his phone number out to everybody because we told him you're going to have to know you can't do that, but he's from South Dakota. I've hunted up there for years. They are some of the most genuine and nice people you will ever meet in your life. No, they're not the flashiest. They think spicy food is salt and pepper. wait till they get some Tabasco or some habanero on something. But it was really cool to hear from what Greg McElroy has seen Kalen DeBoer doing. But for both of y'all are guys that cover schools. Who has deeper quarterback rooms than Alabama or Ole Miss? And Kalen DeBoer has proven he knows how to develop them. Lane Kiffin damn sure has by winning 3 straight SEC titles at Alabama with 3 different quarterbacks, one of whom had switched to running back, and they brought him back out as a quarterback. So I think coaching, would y'all both agree, is at more of a premium than it's ever been? And then the ability to retain people, customer retention, is probably as important as that. Start with you, Rodney.
So you're talking about development and retention?
Yeah, just keeping them.
No,
yeah.
it's yeah. No, I think retention is, nowadays it's a premium. It's a priority.
Yeah.
It's I did something yesterday, actually on TighterInsider.com, and we talked about how things have changed in this college game and how Nick Saban, he could stack up players. He would stack up players for 2 or 3 years, Rob, that wouldn't play. In their third year, they would just be looking at an opportunity to play. And you can't do that for the most part anymore. Now, the quarterback situation, again, I think it's impressive when you can, convince players, hey, look, it's a little bit different position. It's so highly developmental, and every position is to a degree. We know that. But at the same time, if you're an offensive lineman, I'd say it's generally a highly developmental position. If you're a quarterback, that's an extremely highly developmental position. So, but to be able to stack players across the board now and expect them to wait up their opportunities, it's just not going to happen. Had a guy over in the building say this last week, said, look, if you've got 4 and 5 star players that are highly touted, what happens now is you've got someone else telling them, hey, you can come to our school, play now, and we've got an NIL deal waiting for you. So, I mean, these kids, they'll buy into that really quickly. That's why you're seeing, what we're seeing.
Yancey, only 3 players, McElroy said, left Alabama after this most recent portal. How many left Ole Miss during the window April 15th through the 1st or 2nd of May?
That's a great question. I think 2 or 3.
Okay. All right.
Let's see. I think 2. It could have been possibly 3, but there wasn't a whole lot of turnover after the spring practices. And going back to Alabama's head coach there, and where he was raised and driving the bus, and I think that's a really important factor for him at Alabama, because you're going to have tough skin, thick skin. I mean, as soon as you play your first close game against a perceived opponent that you should blow out, right?
Yeah.
The Nick Saban comments are going to come out as soon as you have that first loss. Well, they're going to be coming out. So you gotta have someone that's been on the ground level, that's had his boots on the ground, and I think that's going to bear well for him. I really do. As far as retaining players, it's look. The reason that Lane was able to do it at Ole Miss, because a couple of those guys, Simmons and Walker Howard, they thought that Dart had a good chance to go pro last year.
Yeah.
And so he didn't go. So, they're like, all right, we've been here, we've invested into the program. We'll wait 1 more year. We know he's leaving next year.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's just really, what are the variables, right? If Dart had 2 or 3 more years to come back, they would not have 4 quarterbacks right now. They might have 4 quarterbacks, but they would not have 4 top 100 quarterbacks. It's very tough. It's very tough to retain quality players to go sit for a couple years. It's just that era is probably gone.
What's interesting is prior to the portal, which became the law of the land October 15th of 2018, 42% of all quarterbacks who signed in Division I ended their career at a different school. So we've always had transfers, Rodney. But I also think guys, that we're starting to see a trend develop? Because that's why I'm asking. Greg McElroy said only 3 guys left Alabama in the most recent portal window. You thought 3 or 4 at Ole Miss. I think it was that same number at Auburn. And then they're very selective about who they're bringing in. Again, anytime you have a new product, y'all remember when Microsoft launched Windows back in the mid-90s? How many times it took them to get it right? I think we're starting to see a trend and a settling of the curve. You talk about indicators, the 30-year bond, Treasury bond, the 10-year, what's the 1 year, what are T-bills doing? You're starting to see a trend, fewer players leaving and more of them saying, hey, Coach Rodney, I'm going to stick it out. I'm going to stay here.
Well, I think you have to look at the earlier portal, though. I think look at those numbers. And really what I think, Rob, here is this. I think, when you get to the spring, you go through the spring, it's going to be difficult for players to transfer into a new program. It's much more difficult to do that than it is if you go through spring practice at that program. So you're going to have some, but probably lesser numbers. You're going to have lesser numbers that are willing to hit that portal, in the spring. So I really think the question is, comparing it to the earlier portal, and I think Alabama probably some of their numbers were exaggerated because Saban left. Even though look, they lost to like 18 players before he ever announced his retirement. So anyway, you just have to see how it plays out over time, I think.
Yeah, I think Rodney's right. When you go through spring practice, it's tough. And look, most of these players that are going in the portal after spring are the guys that were not happy with where they fell on the depth chart. And if you expect to go into a new school and make an immediate impact there when you didn't get to go through spring practice, it's good luck. So, but it was interesting though. I will say this. Now, 89 of the top 100 players went in the December to January portal, but 11 still were available for that spring. Went in there, so there were some, 10% of the blue chips portals, so to speak, did go in there. So there's still some guys that you can get. We saw Alabama do it, and they got one of their own players back, right? From Iowa. So I mean, there are some ways to still plug some holes after spring practice, but like Rodney said there, once you go through spring, I mean, those guys for the most part, probably 90% of them are leaving because they're not happy with the depth chart. So most of those guys are going to go down, not a level to double A, but maybe not go to a Power Four conference, maybe go from the SEC to a smaller ACC school or something like that. They're going to go where they can try to get more playing time.
Yeah, and I think the one in the fall, I know Rodney talked about this when I think 29 players left Alabama for one reason or another. Rodney said a lot of them were going to be processed out most likely. And I think that's why those numbers are so much bigger. And I knew that when I asked that question, but I thought there would be a lot more guys after the spring practice when the depth chart, because they know it internally. They may not be putting it out on social media, but they know where they stand. And maybe more guys are realizing, I can bounce around. You're going to see this. And Rodney and Yancey, we've all talked about it. I know Yancey, you and I had a discussion a few weeks ago. The collectives have another year or two probably before the universities very likely make the players employees. And when they do that, you'll go from a small 5 or 6 people running a collective, lean and mean, to 50 or 60 employees, and then they'll have to build a new $75 million building to put all this stuff in. And you just watch where we're going to go with this. And that's what I think is going to happen.
We discussed this before. As a matter of fact, I just saw where the Mississippi governor signed it into law where now the Mississippi universities can directly pay the collectives, but they can give money to the collectives, right? Beforehand, they were not involved at all. Now, they cannot still work out the deal with the player, but they can give the money to the collective, and the collective can go work out the deal with the player. So now we're just one step closer, right? Once the university can work the deals with the players, and then and the university can give money to the collective, and then what's the point of a collective? So yes, we're almost done. We're in the it was a fast brief period in history. It'll be with the collectives. It'll probably be 3 to 5 years total. And yes, I mean, that's where it'll be. And like you said, Rob, there'll be buildings now, 50 employees, and instead of where the collectives were running on maybe $100,000 to $200,000 budget to operate it, is going to go to $10 million to operate it, which is a shame because the money should be going to the players. But then, before long, then now we're going to get it where the players are employees, and then you won't even have to pay the players. So it's going to be a short and brief period. But look, as much as complaints that we got, the product is still as good as ever, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, it is. There's Rodney. Ask anybody. We all would agree, wouldn't we? The product on the field is as good as it's ever been, and at the end of the day, once the games start, all this other stuff goes out the window, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think right now you're right. I mean, the product's probably better than ever in terms of what we see on the field. I mean, it's just a completely different level than it used to be, because the game has changed so much, and kids are now being developed at such an early age that it's really taken off. But no, again, I think it's going to be really interesting to see how this plays out. I know that a lot of these athletic directors are telling their people, their major donors, hey, give me 2 years, give me 2 years of a commitment, because within 2 years, all of these changes that you guys just kind of detailed are going to be taking place, and things are going to change.
Yeah, it's going to be wild. Look, we've run out of time. Great show today. Chris Lee, Southeastern 14. Rodney Orr, Tider Insider. It's only $48 a year. Be a subscriber. Yancey Porter, Rebel Yell Hotline. Catch them Monday nights, 6 p.m. Sports 56 WHBQ and Super Talk Mississippi. And then tonight, 6:30 p.m. Central, live on YouTube, Tider Insider TV, Rodney and Gary Harris. All right, for our executive producer, Brenden Martin, awesome job dealing with the new software. Just remember, we're the most blessed people in the history of the world. Most often we see the face of Christ and the least among us. We all have the ability to accept what we want. You'll get out of life what you accept. Expect greatness. Now go make it happen. See you tomorrow, folks. We're out of here.
In a perfect world, you'd set a health goal and results would happen overnight. In this world, the real world, it takes time, dedication, and the right support to achieve your best self. The Vitamin Shop's health enthusiasts are here to make sure you're not wasting a single moment on the wrong supplements. From the highest quality sports nutrition and superfoods to the most sought after trends, you'll find a huge variety of science-backed solutions for every goal. And the people to help guide you along the path to greatness.
Unbelievably, every 2 minutes in our communities, a child is either bought or sold for sex. I am Ari Dickey, board member for the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. Join me and millions of others in our fight against human trafficking and for its victims by helping to educate the most vulnerable among us, our middle and high school students. Go to nhtcoalition.org, become a partner, and help keep our families safe, because none of God's children are for sale.